Real YouTubers have some thoughts on terastalization, which is in the new games. Okay, so some things about me. Number one, I just traveled for 23 hours to get home from a wedding, which was lovely. Had a really nice time. And then I just had a bunch of pasta. Also, I left my keys not here, so I almost got locked up, but my roommate let me in. Shout outs to him. Yeah, so anyway, if this is a little incoherent, that is why. Anyway, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about terastalization, because while I was at this wedding, some really interesting information came out. Now, many people were invited to play the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games early. I was not. Just hurts 1 to 2, just hurts a little bit. But regardless, that's fine, because people went and they found out information about the new games. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff that came out through this. I think the game is looking really good from what I've seen. I haven't had time. Again, I just got back this morning, so I haven't had a ton of time to watch everything. But what I did see is very, very, very interesting. So basically, the way let me take a step back. Terastalization is the new kind of central mechanic, central gimmick introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The way that it works is it overwrites your primary types. So with whatever type you terastalize into. So a water type Charizard or Terra Water Charizard, when it terastalizes, loses both fire and flying and becomes pure water type. This is very interesting for a number of reasons. It basically allows you to have the flexibility of changing your type, but with one key drawback. Now, the drawback is that when you are a Pokemon and when one of your Pokemon uses a move that is the same type as its type, so a fire Pokemon using a fire move, a water Pokemon using a water move, etc., it gets something called same type attack bonus, or stab for short, which gives the move a 50% power increase and multiplies it by 1.5 times. So basically, I thought terastalizing was really interesting because it would allow you to trade that power boost on your original stab moves for the flexibility of defensive typing. So something like Landorus becoming water type, for example, is cool because, like, of course, you now are no longer weak to ice, you're no longer weak to water, both of which are really relevant. And in exchange, you lose some of the power, like your earthquake and flying moves get weaker. That's how we were under the impression that it worked. And the stipulation was that if you wanted more power out of the mechanic, what you needed to do is use terastalization to turn into a type that you already possess. So again, Charizard becoming either fire or flying type. I thought this was looking really interesting, and the reason is that you don't gain the defensive benefits in most cases. Like, for some cases you still will. Like, for example, Landorus, for example, Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses I think are a really good example. I feel like I said example 10 times, because Landorus can be Terra type and terastalize into ground type. Now it's only, now it gets a rock resist, and it's only 2 times weak to ice rather than 4 times weak, etc. But for the most part, I think most people would be using this as purely an offensive mechanic. So this is stuff, the most obvious one to me is Torkoal. Torkoal's been confirmed to be in the game. Torkoal's ability Drought sits with the sun. You can use Terra Fire Torkoal and have it use Eruption, which is the strongest move that's relevant in competitive Pokemon most of the time, and have and also hold an item on top of it. You can get really insane damage multiplication when it comes to using terastalization as an offensive type by turning into one of the same types. Now, of course, the drawback to this is you don't get the defensive benefits. So to me, it was like, okay, you can terastalize into a type that isn't a type you already are and use it to improve your matchups versus different Pokemon, and maybe use Terra Blast, etc. Or you can use it to turn into a type that you already possess and forfeit those defensive benefits, and in exchange gain much more offensive potency. Sorry, I don't know if I explicitly said this, but if you terastalize into a type that you already have, you get rather than the stab being, I think, 1.5 times, it becomes 2 times. We still need to check this. I think this might have been confirmed, but I'm not positive, so I don't want to give you guys bad information. Yeah, that's how we thought it worked. It has been confirmed. And this is still an early build of the game. Like, it has not been officially confirmed, but from the people who played the demo, it sounds like, from the people who played the demo, it seems like that they tested this and this was the case. If you use terastalization and you turn into a type not one of the types that you initially are, you retain your stab types. You retain your stab, the initial boost you had to your power. So I think a great example of this, let's say Tyranitar turns into a ghost type. We thought that both its rock and dark moves would get weaker. Apparently that's not the case. Apparently it maintains the initial power it had from the rock and dark moves. Now, This is very, very interesting. And it is a little bit cause for concern, I think, but maybe it's okay. Maybe. Basically, do you want the pros or cons first? Let me know in the comments. I'll wait. Okay, let's talk about the pros. Let's talk about the pros first. I think the pros first makes sense. The pros of this is that it draws less of a line between using your Terra type defensively and using it offensively. And so basically what I mean by this is that for a lot of Pokemon, like maybe they could only use Terastalization to turn into a type that they already have because the loss of their stab moves is just too significant, right? Like Tyranitar, again, its attack stat isn't bad. It's actually got a pretty good attack stat, but it feels like it never does any damage a lot of the time. And so if you were to turn it into a ghost type, sure, you would lose a lot of your weaknesses, but you would also lose you'd basically be weakening yourself by 50%, which is a huge decrease. Like, that's a really big deal, especially if your opponent has Intimidate or Burn or Light Screen or Reflect or anything. You're basically having a Pokemon that does no damage. So even though Ghost is such a good type for Tyranitar, it might not be worth it a lot of the time. And I think it would, like, for most Pokemon, how we thought it worked, they would really need a good move that they could use instead of their stab move. So Gyarados with Earthquake, like ground type Gyarados with Earthquake is a great example of this, I think, because like it can use Earthquake, Waterfall, Dragon Dance, Protect, and just be super solid. And then if they have an electric type, you become ground type, and it works both in and out of Terastalization. So the plus side of this is that you are like, it allows Terastalization to be used more across the board because there's no longer a real drawback of Terastalizing your Pokemon, except that you can't Terastalize something else, right? If you have a good spot for that Pokemon Terastalizing, then then you do it. And I think this is good because the thing that initially worried me so much about Terastalization and about just about the mechanic in general was the offensive use of it. So again, I mentioned Torkoal earlier. Anything with a strong spread move, especially an already kind of pushing the boundary spread move, Torkoal, Kyogre are the ones that come to mind, but there's others as well. Being able to gain a power boost on top of that hits both Pokemon, unlike Dynamax and Z moves, which are single target. There's a lot of cause for concern there, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you can really overwhelm people with that. And so the fact that Terastalizing, this change does not affect Pokemon that were Terastalizing into a type that they already have. So it's just a buff to Terastalizing into something else. I think that's what's most interesting about this mechanic personally. So I'm happy to see that end get a buff, and I think that it makes the opportunity cost for choosing to Terastalize into a type that you don't already have much lower. And so I think I'm really hoping that this doesn't just become a degenerate, overwhelm the opponent, Terastalize into a type you already have and just do tons of damage mechanic, and this makes that less likely. Let's talk about the cons, because that's the other part of this equation. The problem with this maintaining of the initial stab types is that I actually made a full video on this on the main channel. It's titled, I think, What If Pokemon Could Have 3 Types? And the reason why I'm concerned about it is because the power boost you get from stab is actually pretty significant. I guess the best example is the items that you can give your Pokemon to hold that boost your Pokemon's power the most are Choice Band and Choice Specs, which increase them by 50%, which is the same as stab. And so the problem is that when you can have a third type when it comes to stab, and it can be any type that you want, you can make Pokemon basically impossible to switch into. So I think I used Mamoswine as an example in the video, where basically you can have a Mamoswine. Ground and ice coverage is very, 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 very good, right? And one of the weaknesses of Mamoswine is that its main weaknesses are its stats, but the thing is that there are still some Pokemon that can switch into it, right? There's Pokemon like Rotom Wash, Rotom Heat, Pokemon kind of with unique combinations of abilities and typing. If you give Mamoswine Terra Fighting, and you Terastalize your Mamoswine into a fighting type, and you give it superpower, all of a sudden there's practically no Pokemon that can switch into a Pokemon like Mamoswine. Now, is Mamoswine the single most broken example of this phenomenon? No, but when you have really strong Pokemon that are already putting out tons of damage, giving them not only the ability to change their type defensively, but also their ability to maintain their original offensive prowess and add another dimension to their offense. And we know that they can all have stab Terra Blast at that point, right? If for certain Pokemon that are offensive. So I could see this being really problematic. I could see it being really, 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 I could see it leading to a very aggressive metagame. And I think that realistically, that's probably maybe even more so than Dynamax. I know that sounds ridiculous, and maybe even probably not more so than Z moves, but it isn't out of the question, because Terastalization is a permanent buff, whereas both of those Zemos were a one-time attack. You just had to get through one attack, which was still a problem, don't get me wrong, but like it was one turn and then it was out of the battle. Whereas a Pokemon like Terra Water Kyogre, or you know, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like another Pokemon with like really strong coverage, that can be around for the rest of the battle until you knock it out. So that's part of the equation. And you also, like, Dynamax lasted a fair bit of time with the 3 turns. But the thing about Dynamax is that it also, both players had access to it, and it was a defensive tool as well, in the sense that like you could raise your HP as well. Like you doubled your HP, so you could use your Dynamax to stall out the opponent's Dynamax. And a lot that was pretty standard counterplay. Was like just trade Dynamaxes and then try and win afterwards. And so that's not looking like the case. Like we don't have access to any defensive counterplay like that with Terastalization, at least not as explicitly. So for these Pokemon that have really strong offensive coverage and move pools, I think we could have a problem. So this is just my thoughts, of course. Like I have to actually play the game. We have to see which Pokemon are legal. There's a lot that's still up in the air, but overall, I think that like this is a good thing. I think it's better this way than like the offensive. Maybe good thing is the wrong way to say it. I think that it's good that there's less incentive to be using the 2x multiplier of turning into a type that you already have, the Terra Fire Torkoal stuff. But this adds another thing to be worried about when it comes to Terastalization. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious. I do read every comment, or at least I try to, and I typically do a pretty good job about it. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you're enjoying the BonusWolfe content. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't. Some people actually don't even realize that this is a separate channel. They just get it recommended and then like are just confused why it looks so different. So if that's you, please subscribe so you get more of these videos. And I think that's it for me. If there's anything else you want me to talk about from the last week and the things that were revealed, like I think we saw Terra Blast Space Power and stuff like that, etc. Let me know. I'm not planning on doing anything, but I'll go through and look again and see if there's anything that I think I would want to talk about and would be interesting. So yeah, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye bye.